Hello and welcome to the Data Privacy Lawyer. My name is Funmi Owolabi. Today's review is going to be on cookies. So cookies constitute personal data under the data protection law because they can identify an individual. I think I've done another review on a different platform that hosts websites. So they help with websites. I mean, they do lots of different things. Okay, that's interesting. Why did I hover over products? It could influence the cookie policy. It also probably influences the type of personal data that's processed because we don't just look at privacy based on one geography. We look at privacy based on what a business is doing. It's very specific. It's like use case. Think about this. Amazon, that's a great example. Amazon doesn't just provide its platform for buying cleaning products, which is what I use it for. Amazon has different offerings like storage of data. Businesses may have different offerings that they provide, and the offerings may process personal data differently. Let's think about this. McDonald's is another good example. McDonald's doesn't just offer burgers. They have a component of their business that relies on real estate too. The groups of personal data for each activity or product offered by these organizations influences the privacy program compliance required of the business. You have to look at all the different facets. That's why I always hover over products, because it starts my mind thinking about what might be in scope, what must be covered by a business. So let's scroll down. The first thing we notice is this has not been updated in 8 years. Let's move on from that. So you see this, generally this tick and X allows you to manage your privacy choices. The first thing that I always like to see is I like to see the preference center. We weren't presented with a cookie banner. They're a bit different. The cookie banner is notice, immediately land on the site. Hello Funmi, we're going to collect your cookies. From that banner, generally you're presented with your privacy choices, right? Because I told you that cookies constitute personal data. So we're going to click it. So the buttons here are out and in. So these cookies are used by advertising companies to serve ads that are relevant to your interests. So I'm going to say, I'm going to opt out. That's what I'm guessing this means. And then I'm going to submit my settings. So as far as I understand this website, as it currently stands, the only cookies that they collect are advertising cookies, right? So let's make sure that's consistent with the notice, because this information should align with the notice. This is me exercising my choices. This is telling me what their practices are. Different, right? Same with the notice that we get at the bottom of the page. The reason why you see that banner as opposed to this policy generally is because prior to the processing of any personal data, you have to obtain consent and you have to provide notice. Because a cookie is personal data, we need to be presented notice first before any collection takes place. Now, we weren't presented that. Now, let me give an opinion on why I think it wasn't presented to me personally for me. I am located in the United States. Like I mentioned at the beginning, geography influences a company's obligations. The view that I see as a US resident is different to the view that a European Union resident may see because the data protection laws are different in Europe. And that's something that companies should talk to their privacy counsel about to figure out whether they're going to have a global approach when it comes to consent management or if they're going to do it geography to geography. What does China's privacy law state we need to do? Okay, the iteration of the website presented in China will cover that. What does US privacy laws dictate that we do? What are our responsibilities? Okay, let's offer those features on the US website, country by country, geography by geography. Now, some companies take an approach, they look at what are the most restrictive data protection laws and in which geographies are they. Let's just have a global approach, meaning that our obligations in the most restrictive of countries is going to cover how we detail our responsibilities to all individuals. All individuals are going to be beneficiaries based on the most restrictive data protection laws, because in that case, we're covering ourselves in every geography by adhering to the most restrictive standard. Okay, I really wanted to talk about cookies, but I think it's valuable to look at the preference center. I'm going to submit this as out. I like this final page. This is wonderful. I really like this. And I think in other reviews that I've done, I haven't been presented with a confirmation that my preferences have been successfully updated. I like that. I think this is valuable. Now, is it necessary in my opinion? It's not necessary as long as the business is capturing it on the back end, but I personally like it as a personal feature because when we're looking at privacy compliance, we look at audience. Now, a lay audience meaning an audience that's not sophisticated in the nuances of the law, they now know that their options have definitely been registered, and I like that a lot. This hasn't been updated in many years. I think that this should be updated because it depends on the products and solutions, but businesses are changing all the time. I don't know how large this organization is, but if anything about how they process personal data or use cookies and similar tracking technologies have evolved, then that would influence the type of notice about their practices they're presenting to their consumers. Okay, let's talk a lot about this. We use cookies on the website and associated domains for these following purposes: authentication, customization, security, and other functional cookies. Okay, are you taking note? Functional. We got the word functional here. Performance and analytics, third parties, which there's not a lot of detail on what constitutes a third party, but I can presume it's advertising, Squarespace ads, and opting out. Okay, now we saw the word functional here, we saw customization, and we saw security. But when we exercised our privacy choices, we're only presented with advertising cookies. So what about those other cookies that are discussed in the policy but are not reflected in the preference center? Do you see why it's very important to always update your policies periodically to ensure they reflect what you're actually doing? I don't know what the disconnect is between the policy and the preference center, but you need to make sure that all your cookie-related documents align. Everything should follow one another. When you're presenting notice, you need to be transparent. What is reflected on your policy needs to be reflected in your preference center, needs to be reflected in your notice. There shouldn't be that inconsistency because it's confusing for a consumer audience. If I was to present this, and maybe I might consider doing this in the future, maybe having my parents take a look at this, I would be intrigued on what their opinion would be about what's actually happening. Because what they're saying is happening on the policy, and the opportunity to opt out, the only opt-out we're allowed to do here is related to advertising cookies. But we can see here that they've got others like performance and analytics. Is this happening or not? That's my question. Is it happening or not? If it is no longer happening since this was effective, right, then we need to remove it. If it is still happening, then we also need to present choice, right? Need to add it here. All right, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have comments about what I've said, leave them below and I'll see you in another review.